Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. I'm going to have a go. It won't be anything flash because I haven't got the time, but I'm going to have a go at joining in with Maria Young's challenge that she's put out. It's basically got a hashtag Orchid Reflections 2017. The idea is you just backtrack over your year with your orchids, and apparently you can include other things as well, life experiences, whatever. I'll stick to the orchids in the main, but it's a matter of looking back and, you know, thinking about your successes, things that you think you might do better in this year, 2018, things that you just got wrong and have put right since. So I'm going to go back to the beginning of the year. I came out of winter last year with a not very successful resting period for my dendrobiums. It actually cost me some plants trying to rest them. So I would class this year's winter as a change that hopefully is for the better. But I rested my resting type dendrobiums last year up in the cool bedroom on the windowsill. The humidity in there was ridiculously low, and quite honestly the temperatures, because it was in the house environment, even with no heating in that room and the window open a lot of the time, the temperatures just didn't drop down that much. We had a mild winter. We're making up for it this year. Yeah, so I class looking back over things and making changes to try and make improvements not as a success, but as a success for me. It might not work for the plants, that, as always, remains to be seen. But it's a change for me. The one thing I really don't want to ever do is get stuck in my ways. I don't want to be that person who actually, when asked a question, says, right, what you got to do is this. Just because that worked for me doesn't mean it'll work for somebody else. And it's that open mind that I want to try and keep. You know, there's many ways to grow the same orchid. None of them are necessarily wrong unless your plant dies. You know, then you could probably say, I think I got that one wrong. But again, you know, the information's out there. Unless you go into really, really obscure species, in which case the information will be very thin on the ground. But those types of orchids are getting harder and harder to get anyway, so you're just less likely to come across them, simple as that. One thing I've just noticed, Sherry Baby's opened. That wasn't open yesterday, it is now, and most of the buds have opened all at once. Some are upside down, not quite sure why, that spike hasn't been staked, but the fragrance won't come from that for a few days, so I'm quite happy to wait. So, starting off coming out of winter then, during the previous summer, not the one just gone, the one goes back to 2016, I used a fertiliser because it was suited to RO water, sounded good, and I damaged some of my plants. And I don't regret using it because the choice was sound. I didn't realise that it would have adverse effects on some of my plants. Not all of them, it was only a few, don't get me wrong, I'm not burying that fertiliser forever, although I personally won't use it again, because I've found a better one in my opinion, so you know, I don't need to. But because I stopped using that because of the few problems it caused on some of my orchids, I didn't have a feed. And so going through the winter, I didn't want no feed. You know, there's some things still growing in the winter, so I used a sort of seaweed-based feed, which quite honestly was far from a balanced feed and really was designed for use with soil. There were a lot of things in that make soil good conditions for growing things in. Well, that's not going to work with the sort of media we use, you know. So it didn't do my orchids a lot of good through the winter. Then the MSU fertiliser arrived, and quite honestly, I can definitely say that things grew better this year. And in a lot of circumstances, their conditions didn't change, but the growth did, and the quality of the blooms did. So I am more than happy with that. I have no intentions to change it whatsoever. So I class getting that, and especially the way I got it, as a success. A change of feed, I think, has made a dramatic improvement, so it's a success. Another success was finding out that I had fusarium. That's not the success. The success for me is the fact that I managed to get enough information, especially with the help of Anna Maria, Miracle Orchids channel, and the extreme effort she went to actually find out virtually everything there is to know about that horrible subject. And it helped me, you know, and I'd class it as a success that some of my orchids have been, I won't say cured, but they've come through it. They've come out the other end and they're growing on nicely now. Now I may still have that lurking on a couple of plants. I have no guarantee and no way of finding out, because some plants seem to manage to do quite well and live with it. Well, how do you know then? So I'd class that as a success, actually bringing some plants through that. You know, there's a heap of them under the hedge that were just too far gone. And that's because I didn't know I had it. But once I found out, I dealt with it. And it seems to have worked in the main, although there were a lot of losses. My change of attitude to buying orchids, although not totally successful, the change of attitude was to only buy orchids I really wanted. Well, partly failed, because I did succumb to the pretty blooms on some orchids, but that stops this year. This year I'm going to be hard-nosed about the whole subject, and I'm only buying new orchids that are basically on my list. I won't exclude spur-of-the-moment purchases, but they won't be just that. They'll be perhaps at a show and you see an orchid and you think, God, I like that. That's a nice looking plant. I love those blooms. Well, I shall get my phone out, and circumstances permitting, I will Google the plant. I will find out as much as I can about it. Length of time the blooms last, conditions, temperature range, all that sort of stuff, there and then while standing in front of it with my hand on it so nobody nicks it. And then at the end of that, I either get my pennies out or I put my hand back in my pocket. So that's definite this year. I'm only buying plants that I really want. And it won't be many, because there's a room aspect here. There is only so much. And some of my plants are starting to take off and head towards sort of specimen-sized plants. So they, you know, they take up more space. Literally, you know, they get wider, they get taller. There's only so much room out here. And I mean, just looking round, you can see shelves are pretty crowded. And there's an element of downside if you get them too squashed up, because, you know, leaves will shade other leaves and you start restricting light. You'll restrict airflow. You know, I could put a fan on that shelf and the ones at the front would get the blast and the ones up the back would hardly move, because the others would divert that airflow. So keeping a good airflow, which is important, trust me, involves space. And to gain some of that space, some of my plants are going to go. I'm not there yet, but during this quiet period where there's not much going on, I'm going to go through each plant in my notes, look at it, possibly go away and do a bit more research on it and think, do I really want that plant? And if I don't, it's going to go. I won't be throwing plants away that are healthy plants, that's for sure. They will go in a orderly fashion. I'm not interested in making money out of my plants per se. Like, you know, I don't grow my plants to split up and sell. That's not why I grow my plants. If it happens, that's fine by me. But I'm not one of these people that thinks that plant's worth £10, I'm not selling it for 7. I'll sell it for whatever somebody wants to pay me. Simple as that. And quite honestly, I'm quite happy to give some away. You know, it's a bonus for me. I get the space they were using. And if I've decided to go down that road with those plants, there's a reason for it. So I'd rather have the space. And then I leave room for my wish list. Success this year is managing to get hold of some Latoria types. I had no specific ones in mind. I just knew I wanted some. And it took nearly 2 years to find them, and then like 37 buses, they all arrived at once. And if you don't get that, you'll have to look it up. Yeah, so cool growers hanging in there through the summer, and we did have a couple of mini heat waves this year. You know, Miltoniopsis and Masdevallias and Restrepias coming out the other end of that not dead is pretty good going in a place like this. I mean, I actually got up to 32 degrees at times. And boy, did I whack up the circulation. My 2 circulating fans were on gale force setting. You know, plants were bending over in the wind. But it keeps the leaves cool. Doesn't do them any harm, and it keeps the leaves cooler. Stops that transpiration, taking all the humidity out of the plant. So it's worth doing. You know, airflow helps cool things down. It can go the other way, like now when it's flipping cold out here. Stood here in my dressing gown at 16 degrees. If my big circulating fan was on now, I'd be chilling my plants, because the cooling effect would be not required because of the low temperature. Another major success. Not only getting these at an incredibly low price despite the shipping from Ireland, thank you Rachel, but the success of actually getting some plants transferred into these and watching them take off. You know, literally. Plants that have been sitting in the doldrums for a while, suddenly chucking out good root systems, escaping from the pots down the side and everything. So I am well pleased with those. I need some more because I've still got some plants that I know would benefit from going in that style of potting. And quite honestly, with pots like that, you've got a job to ever overwater things. And the Cattleya types are one of the ones that will suffer from overwatering. You know, especially if their media is quite tight with not a lot of air around it. They will suffer if you overwater them. They need to dry. And in that environment, they dry well and quickly and thoroughly throughout the pot. Not just like the top layer of the pot and the bottom still soaking wet like you get in some of the plastic pots. What else? Other successes? I got some awards. Let me just go out in the kitchen for a second. I know the light's not very good and you're not physically going to be able to see these, but some of these go back to 2014. But this year at some of the shows and at the competition benches at the Orchid Society meetings, given the type of plants I've got, I don't think I've done bad. There's quite a few firsts up there dotted around. I mean, this was my first ever shock award. You know, an award of merit for one of my Tolumnias at an international orchid show at Malvern. That was a surprise. I only have one terrestrial orchid. And that got an award at the same show, Malvern. These certificates from Bournemouth are a bit of a nuisance because although they tell you when and what, they don't tell you the plant. Whereas that one does. That is my pride and joy. Bournemouth Orchid Society only put 2 or 3 of these out a year, because basically when you're looking at 36 out of 40 points, it means that you've got full marks in quite a few of the categories. You can't get 36 out of 40 very often, and that's my Dendrobium hercoglossum that did bloom exceptionally well. I got a reward for it. That I am proud of. Some of the others, yeah, it's nice to have them and everything, but yeah, that one's special. And some of these involved silverware. Actually got a cup with your name engraved on it, for all prosperity, until the silver comes off the cup and they have to get a new one, and they still get them re-engraved. Anyway, so there's a bit of pride in some of that. This one here, this Cattleya hybrid, I got told by 2 of the judges out of the 5 that that should have been a first, and the only reason it wasn't is I didn't clean the leaves off properly. So there were some marks on the leaves that they didn't like, but otherwise that would have been a first. So I've done quite well, you know. We did have a major failure in the Tolumnias. I actually lost a lot of Tolumnias due to a scale outbreak that with Tolumnias, it's severe, simply because they get right down in the base joints of the leaves and they chew the bottom of the leaves and the new growths off and any new roots that are in that area. So they can actually decimate the Tolumnias because of the way the Tolumnia grows and where the scale get. Now, I've dealt with them. I won't say there are no scale in here, but they live in fear, because if they show their face they don't last long anymore. So yeah, major success was changing from not liking strong chemicals in my grow room, and a lot of that was not because I come out here, but it was because my cats do. And you know, if you've got pets and kids and things like that, and other people touching your plants and stuff like that, you have got to take care with the strong chemicals. But since I got this new rack, I moved my chair out of here. So one cat now virtually never comes out here, and the other one might follow me out here and sit on the mat for a bit and then go out. So they're not really out here anymore. I take my own personal care with the stronger chemicals, but it basically involves, when I spray a plant, I do it down there. So any residual spray that misses the plant ends up on that concrete bit. And the one thing I do know, when Pussycat does come out here, he doesn't step off the carpet, he stays there. That's why that bit of carpet's a different colour, I think, because that's where he sits. He's only there for a short time. So yeah, I moved on to some sensible chemicals that I'm allowed to have. There's a lot I'm not allowed to have, because I'm not a responsible adult according to our wonderful government. Yeah, so I'd class my previous year as quite successful, despite some failures, some disappointments. I got out on some field trips. That's not for everybody. I know those videos don't appeal to quite a few people, because our native orchids are tiny. You know, they're often like a column of tiny little flowers, so they produce a splash of colour, but unless you can get in within about an inch of the bloom to film it, you can't really see that it's even an orchid sometimes. But I enjoy those days out. I'm happy to film them when I go, trying to find some of our rarer butterflies in the forests and out on the downs. It's a smashing day out for me, and I'm happy to take the camera along and allow you to join me, basically. If you don't like those sort of videos, you know, viewing is not compulsory. If you start watching a video and it doesn't look like something you're interested in, you can skip out, go and watch a different one. You know, like I say, viewing is not compulsory. But changes to my channel, camera change, some different music now and again. Yeah, so I mean, I don't change my channel that much. It's had the same start and end for some considerable time. I've got no plans on changing that. That involves work and doesn't really achieve a lot. As you know, I'm attempting to monetize my channel. In my mind, I should have been doing that a long time ago. And I'm not doing that to make money as such. What I'm trying to do is get some help to support this place, the equipment. I mean, I've had to replace one of the circulating fans this year. I've replaced 2 of the manky old foggers with new ones. It all costs money. I've had to replace one of these little units this year, my hydrostat. You know, I bought some new shelves. So there is an amount. I bought some new orchids. So there's an amount of expenditure to keep this place going. And that's what any income I get from that, which isn't going to be a lot, quite honestly, but what I get will be fed back in here. You know, it will enable me to perhaps look at an orchid I would really like, that in my mind I would not normally spend that amount of money on an orchid. No, I'm not spending that, it's far too much. Well, if I had a little bit of income from the channel, I might think, well, actually I can afford that now. My channel's paid for it. And then you get to see a new orchid video. You know, it all sort of works together. And at the end of the day, I'm not having ads in the middle of videos, because that drives me up the wall on other people, so I wouldn't inflict that on my viewers. I don't want to do that. But I'm happy to have some clips at the front. And I'd like to make a point there. It's a point that somebody else made that somebody else then watched and came over to my channel and did a "did you know" comment. Well, yes, I did know, but you've all got your favourite channels, and I'm sure you get a lot of enjoyment out of watching them, and perhaps gain some knowledge, some help with your own orchids, all that sort of stuff. So there's a purpose there. It's not just pleasure. And on the ads at the front of the video, the 5, 6 second ones that you can't skip out of, you're obliged to watch them unless you quit that page effectively, and then if you try and go back and watch the video, you'll get presented with the flipping ad again. So they're there. But the longer ones, the ones that do come up with the skip ad, before you hit that button, stop and think about what you're doing, because the person who puts the effort into making those videos, and there is an amount of effort, some put a lot more effort in than others because of the software they're using or the tools or whatever, but if you don't watch that ad, then that channel doesn't get any funds. So although it might be a bit of an inconvenience, perhaps just letting those ads run at the start of the video, you know, go and make a cup of tea while the video fires up. You don't have to physically sit and watch them, but you know what I mean. By letting them play, if the ad is completely viewed, then if that channel, well, if the channel wasn't monetized, you wouldn't be watching the ad, would you? But you see what I'm getting at. You're helping the channel by allowing those ads to run. I won't say watching them, because you don't physically have to watch them, but by allowing them to run from start to finish, you're helping support that channel. And at no expense of your own, apart from a small amount of time. Now, if you've got that time, obviously all the channels that are doing that, and me when I get there, will appreciate it. We never know who you are, you know. It's like the likes on a video. We never get to know who those people are. We see the comments, yes, but you know, and the private messages, all that sort of stuff. But we never get to find out who likes and dislikes our video. Yeah, so I think I've had a pretty successful year. I've got some new types of orchids. I won't say I've started any new genera, because I don't actually think I have this year. Yes, bulbophyllums. Well, I got presented with those as a gift in a box. So basically I had to deal with them. And I have added 1 or 2 since then. I've got enough now. I probably won't get any more, unless, as I say, I see a stunner at a show and ask how long the blooms last, or look it up and think, yeah, I could have that one in my collection. But apart from that, the types of orchids I've got, I'm happy with the numbers I've got. So yeah, my collection's going to become a little static this year, I think, and only specials will get bought in. So yeah, this isn't a flashy video. That was not my plan for today. I've still got my son with me. He hasn't gone back to university. We've got some trips to do today, so I haven't got time to do flashy video editing and all that sort of stuff. But I'm pleased to take part in a community project, albeit not a very, you know, it's not one of my best videos, it's just a chat. But yeah, we all have successes, we all have failures. Don't let the failures knock you. Yeah? You know, treat them as a challenge. I mean, I've just noticed that this yellow twinkle has decided to blast quite a few buds in amongst these spikes. You look there, couple there. Well, I'm not classing that as a failure, because I've got 5 or 6 spikes on the plant, so a couple of buds drop in I'll live with. Reason, unknown, probably cool temperatures at night. Who knows? I mean, I get asked sometimes what's the minimum temperature. Well, my minimum temperature out here is about 13 degrees C, and it's my heater stops it dropping below that. There's probably about a third of the plants out here wouldn't mind going lower. You know, they could probably go down to 8 or 9 degrees and they'd still be fine, but there's a lot that wouldn't. There's a sea of them up there. Taking Vandas down to that temperatures, they're just going to stop growing, and their roots will just close over, and then you've got to fire them up again in the spring. So yeah, I mean, most of what's out here is either classed as cool growing, that's down there, yeah, Miltoniopsis, Restrepias, Masdevallias, There's a Pleurothallus in there. Those are the cool growers. Some of the Coleogenes are cool growers, you know, so there are cool growers out here that struggle in the summer. But most of what's out here would be classed as intermediate. And 12, 13 degrees C is low enough, quite honestly. If you can maintain that, you should do okay. But then I've got some orchids that don't like it that cold. You know, things like the Phalaenopsis, they'd prefer to be up 16, 17, 18 degrees C. That's their comfort zone, and higher. You know, so my Dendrobium Phalaenopsis aren't too happy out here in the winter. But happy or not, they are pushing some spikes out. So we have got... these have recovered relatively well this year because they were in a hell of a state at the beginning of this year. So to actually get new canes with nice clean leaves and some spikes, I'd have to class that as a success. They're not my favourite dendrobiums, they're not my favourite orchids by a long shot, but they're there and I don't like losing them. So, you know. But some of those may get moved on to other people. Maybe. This little Maxillaria over here, that's Maxillaria sophronites. It only has tiny little blooms, and it was climbing off its mount and trying to take over the world, so I thought, right, you're going in a pot, mate, where I can confine you a little bit better, and any growths that extend out the side of the pot, hopefully I can just twist round and get their roots in the pot and get more like a bush rather than a straggly thing. But I mean, it's got one flower out, one just going over, 1, 2, 3, that's got 4 or 5 buds to come on that one. The most flowers I've ever had on that plant at once is 3, so maybe I'll top that in a minute. So yeah, I think that'll do. I mean, my Cymbidium I'd have to class as a success, but not through effort, through negligence. Do you know this plant in that pot, which was the 2 older bulbs and some leafless back bulbs, that's what it was like. That went through last winter outside the front door ready to go in the dustbin, and I never got round to chucking it. So it spent the winter sheltered from the rain and probably went down below freezing quite a few times, and it came out the other end, put up a nice big fat new bulb, and now has 2 spikes. So without any effort from me, I have a success. My major success has yet to be, because my work that I put in 2017 and the effort going into the winter with my resting dendrobiums, the reward for that is yet to be, and therefore is unknown, and I don't know whether I'll even get the reward. But the reward for that is possibly 5 or 6 weeks away, when we start seeing some buds or spikes on those resting dendrobiums. There'll be a whoop of joy, especially for those that have never bloomed before, and there are some lurking up there, little tykes. Yeah, so overall, I mean, I've now got zygopetalums that are alive and growing. Well, I'll class that as a pretty good success, having killed 4. One of them was virus, that don't count, that wasn't my fault, that came in with that. Luckily it didn't get to anything else, I don't think. Yeah, so overall, slight changes, major change in the fertiliser I use, which I class as a good success. Keeping plants alive that are not that happy in my environment, you know, like the cool growers, I'm pleased with that, you know. There have been losses, but that's part of the game, really. And quite honestly, I'd rather harp on about the successes rather than the losses. And I don't get down about problems with my orchids. They don't get to me, if you know what I mean. I mean, once I realised I had Fusarium, well, yes, it's sad knowing that some plants are just not going to make it. Well, chuck them out. Wash them from your mind and concentrate on the ones you think you can save. And like I've done, get some replacements. You know, a lot of my Cattleyas got hit. Well, they're gone. Dead and buried, as they say. And I've got some new ones. You know, so overall a success. Yeah, and let's have some more of it in 2018. And I'd like to see some more people doing a much better video than mine along these lines, a reflection. The problem is, to do this video properly, I've got to go back and look for videos that I've made and capture clips from them and put them all together. It's an editing nightmare for me because the original clips from the camera have been deleted. So all that's left is the YouTube video. So I've literally got to play that and use a screen capture methodology to get, you know, a clip back into the software as though it came from the camera, and it's hard work and I haven't got the time. But hopefully some of the rest of you will join in with this. It's hashtag Orchid Reflections 2017, started by Maria Young on MY Orchid Adventures. I see Tropical Party's done his this morning. I haven't seen many others lurking. Maybe the word hasn't got out yet. But give it a go. It's a bit like that My Orchid collection in 60 seconds. You can be as flash or as ordinary as you wish. It's the taking part that's important. So go and see if you can join in, do something, you know, and let's get a little community project going again. There seem to be a few going around, so join in, see what you think, and happy growing for 2018. Get your successes on film, you know, get them up there. Let's all have a look. It's a part of the enjoyment of the hobby is seeing other people's stuff and their problems and their successes. It all hangs together and makes for an interesting hobby. Yeah, that'll do. See you next time.